Hello there Internet, and welcome to another Metroidvania map announcement / mini review video, and it is only going to be a mini review video because I haven't actually 100% settled on my thoughts on Voidwrought yet. Overall, really enjoyed the game, but there are a couple of things that niggled me, which I know that right now, because I've spoken to the devs about it, they are working on fixing up, polishing up. They have heard feedback loud and clear and they're doing something about it. So I'm going to talk about my experience with the game, but more importantly I'm going to focus on what this video is about. It's about the map, it's about my overall impressions of the game. Those of you who've been with the channel a while know that my general thoughts on Metroidvanias can be summed up by how closely they adhere to a somewhat arbitrary three-pillar approach. The pillars being combat, abilities that get us around and maybe get used in combat, and the biomes that we get to visit and explore and find stuff in as we go. So let's very quickly address those. This is of course an unscripted video because I'm far too lazy to script things out. Combat-wise, Voidwrought might seem to be quite simplistic, but it's simplistic in much the same way that Hollow Knight is simplistic. You don't have a wide range of melee attacks. There's no fancy combos or anything like that. It starts off pretty simple and straightforward. Where Voidwrought differs from Hollow Knight, and as much as I hate to compare it to Hollow Knight, I know that's the point of reference for a lot of people. In Hollow Knight, you had your basic melee attack and your pogo attack, both of which Voidwrought has, and you got three spells. You got the shooty spell, you got the wailing despair upwards arcing spell, and you got the ground smashy spell. I should know the names of them, but I can't remember what they are off the top of my head. And then you get the charms, which allow you to modify a lot of things in game. Voidwrought also has a pseudo charm system, but actually it's got two different types. So it's got souls, which are passive relic style things essentially that you equip and have an effect. The effect can be things like revealing parts of rooms on the map. It can be things like poison gas cloud around you. It can be things like adding an iframe to your dash. It can be things like familiars that, you know, those of you familiar with Castlevania Symphony of the Night or any of the Castlevania games that give you the familiar option, things that float around next to you and shoot enemies or swing at enemies or heal you or yada yada yada. It's got passives that you can equip. You can only equip 3 of them, and I do sometimes feel like I wish I could have equipped more, but that's how balance is achieved. And you get active relics, which are essentially sub-weapons that you can use, and you use these using void charges, which you get back by hitting stuff in combat. Relics are, as it turns out, quite powerful. I didn't use them for the first hour and a bit of the game, and I struggled, and when I finally started using them, it's like, oh, that is a considerable amount of difference that those make. It's quite night and day, actually, the amount of damage the relics can pump out. And this does lead to a bit of an imbalance with the game's difficulty curve. And this is one of two things that I will critique the version that I played, the launch version of the game. That is something that I will critique the game for. The difficulty curve starts off for me reasonably well balanced and challenging. It wasn't overly frustrating. It was, it was a fine challenge for the start of the game. But by the time I got to probably halfway through the game, I was starting to tear through bosses a little bit too quickly, I think. I had issues with the first couple. They felt like a decent challenge. But by about halfway through the game, I was really starting to feel I'm killing these bosses a little bit too quickly. I'm not having to have multiple goes at them. And keep in mind, I'm not good at video games. I am under no illusions that I am a got good style video game player. I know I am not. But nevertheless, the challenge in the latter half of the game needs tweaking, and it is being tweaked. It's something the devs have had feedback on. They're doing something about. So combat has a lot of different options in terms of your relics. You get a relic that can make a bubble that slows enemies down, slows time. There's a relic where you can lob a poison sensor at enemies, and enemies within the kind of gas cloud that it creates take more damage. There are sticky bombs, there are bouncy fire bombs, there are grenades, there are axes, there are big choppy swords. There are some really weird and wonderful things, as befits the eldritch horror kind of setting of the game. So, for me, combat was very serviceable and quite well thought out in terms of the options it gave you, but as of the time of recording, a little bit too easy in the later stages of the game for me. But that's going to get changed, and there's going to be a new game plus at some point. It's not in the game yet. I can see why it's not in the game yet. It's probably a little bit more of a task than just saying, oh, just play through the game again, but enemies are spongier. So, that was combat. Biomes. I know that's the third pillar, but I like to talk about the powers afterwards. As you can see from the map, just all the different colours, there are some fairly sizable biomes in this place, and I absolutely have to, because this is the thing that attracted me to the game in the first place. I have to give huge amounts of praise to the artists who worked on this, because the game has got atmosphere. There is so much detail in this game, including things that you kind of notice because you don't notice them. That makes no sense. Let me explain. In the Old Waters here, the Old Waters is a kind of frozen ice connecty zone. You can see that it's in 3 bits. You can work your way up and get to the surface, and there's a very, very clear kind of doorway there that takes you from the Old Waters into the surface. But the zones aren't separate in terms of their art. They bleed into each other. And this gives it a much more organic and more natural feeling of progression than, oh, this is the Old Waters, it's icy. This is the surface, it's got a big bright red star shining huge on the horizon. The zones bleed into each other in terms of art direction, and that is such a small but significant touch for me in terms of making the world seem whole. Not like these are separate zones that were planned out separately and then just slotted together. No, this is obviously... There was a plan when it came to how these zones work and fit together. And I was really impressed with that. I'm really, really impressed with the art overall. You can see from the kind of B-roll footage, which is all from the first play session that I did of the full game. You can see that the art has got a wonderful homogenized style. You know, everything has got a really crisp line art. All the line art is appropriately thick. There's nothing that's mismatched or weirdly scaled or anything like that. And this allows for some really interesting effects as well. For those of you who haven't tried it, try setting some enemies on fire. I really like the fire effects that enemies get around them. So the biomes are visually distinctive. They're visually diverse. They very interestingly bleed into each other. They've all got their own sets of challenges and enemies and little things to seek out and find. And here's my second point of critique for the zones. In Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, the game does a really good job of telling you what there is left to find in the zone, and Voidwrought does exactly the same thing. It's got a little thing on the compendium screen that shows you how much of that particular zone have you got uncovered. How many of the secret things have you found in that zone? How many of the treasury things have you found in that zone? How many of the envoys have you found in that zone? And you need to find all the envoys in order to get the true ending of the game. What it doesn't do right now, but they are working on it, and it may even be in the patch that I believe they're talking about coming out this week. So this section might not even be vaguely relevant as a point of critique, but I think it's worth saying anyway. In the vanilla version of the game, there is no way of telling where in a particular zone something is hidden. There's no, the room border changes colour when everything is in the room. There's no compass that you can equip that gives you a little tone when something is hidden in a room when you enter. There's no way currently of secret finding apart from going around and scraping all the walls and hitting everything, and that, for me, keeping in mind that I'm somebody who likes this kind of stuff, it still became a little bit tedious. But they are working on it. They've already got an idea of what they are going to do in terms of, well, yeah, we know we kind of missed the mark on that. We've got a couple of ideas of things that we want to implement. One of them will be reasonably straightforward. The other might be worthwhile, but will take some more time. And they've been very open about that, which again, I have to applaud them for. There's only really 3 people who created this game, with I believe, additional help from publishers and so on and so forth. But the main credits lists 3 devs. So, yeah, by the time I got to the Lost Gardens, which is the big orange area on the right-hand side of the map, the Lost Gardens is quite large, and in some ways it's quite slow to get around, because there's a lot of little kind of morph ball tunnels that you need to crawl through. And you don't move as fast in the morph ball. So I was getting a little bit frustrated there, because it's like, I have to find all the things, because I like my 100% completion, but getting around the zone is a little bit slower because you are slowed down by these morph ball tunnels, and I've got no way of telling which rooms I need to be more thoroughly searching. I did it in the end, but I will be glad that the secret finder thing is put in the game so other people don't have to reach that stage of, oh, I just got lucky and hit the wall in just the right place to find it, or, you know, I spent 3 hours or whatever it was scraping all the walls, and how did I miss that the first and second time? That kind of feeling. So, this issue is going to be fixed. Did it detract from my experience as a completionist in the vanilla version of the game? Yes. Am I going to heavily penalise the devs? No. Because they've admitted that they made a mistake and they're going to fix it. And that's great. I think that's good design. I also think that's good community service and taking aboard feedback. They've been very active at collecting feedback, I've noticed. So, decent, if not mind-blowing combat. Plenty of options. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. It's very serviceable, and it's got a good pace to it. It's got a good feel to it, but it's not like Devil May Cry, loads of combos, and it's not Souls-like, and I do like my Souls-like combat, but I'm glad this doesn't have Souls-like combat. It keeps the pace up. Good combat. Really interesting and visually diverse and fun to get around, for the most part, zones. Third pillar of Metroidvania design is the Metroidvania abilities themselves, the things that get you around. And one of the things that I have found from talking to other people about this is that you can get a lot of these abilities in very different orders, depending on where you go first and what you do and how prone you are to trying to sequence break things. There's a surprising amount of options in terms of where you go and what you do first, or in what order you do things. It is quite possible to get the grappling hook ability before the wall jump ability. It's quite possible to get to places that require the grappling hook without having the grappling hook. because you can pogo on enemies. You can get the slither ability, which is your morph ball / spider ball thing, which actually also lets you climb up walls as long as there are no enemies shooting you, because that knocks you out of it. There are ways of getting to the court, which is the green area on the side of the map. You can get there quite quickly without having to go through the route that I took the first time. There are multiple ways that you can go about things. It's quite open, and there aren't any main quest icons. So it's not like you have to go here for the next step of the story. In fact, there isn't really any of that in the game. There's no main quest that you have to follow, though I will talk about quests in a moment. The Metroidvania powers are diverse. You get sliding, you get grapple hooks, you get spider ball, essentially, you get wall climb, you get wall jump, you get the ability to possess technology to open up special doors and to interact with puzzles and the fast travel points. You get charged attacks, you get, did I say double jump? I can't remember, I didn't script this. There are a lot of the standard options, but they've all got this kind of weird, eldritch, tentacly amorphous kind of vibe to them. So, they all work well. They all feel good as far as I'm concerned. I've seen people complaining that the dash doesn't have iframes, and that's a very common complaint in a lot of Metroidvanias. Everybody expects the dash to have iframes. I get it. There is a soul / relic thing that you can equip to give your dash iframes, but it does take up one of your relic slots. So yeah, I mean, if you want it, it's there. I actually didn't really feel the absence of it, but again, I did a lot of pogoing once I got used to the pogoing, and yeah, I just didn't feel the need for that because I was already quite powerful. So, Metroidvania powers discussed, combat discussed, biomes discussed. Let's take a little moment to focus on something that is a little bit more, I'm not going to say unique, but a bit more interesting about Voidwrought. See if I can fit this on. This is the shrine. This is where you begin the game. You begin the game here. In fact, you begin the game by falling out of this giant egg thing at the top. And when you start off the game, you will only have access to this section. It actually ends there. This room isn't accessible right from the start. And you collect your first healing flask. You're not allowed to leave the shrine until you've got a heal, which is nice. You chat to this person here who turns the healing flask into an actual heal. And then you can break your way out and you can go and explore the game. After you leave over here, you'll meet this chap. He's the shrine keeper. He's been guarding the shrine since time immemorial, and he's super glad that finally somebody has broken their way out and things are in motion. And he will perform an important function throughout the game. After you defeat the first boss, which is going to be the council down here, you'll get your first power, or your second power actually by that point, which is your ledge grab, and then you'll find an NPC here, and these are devotees, and you get 2 of them from this particular one. And devotees are essentially your servants. They will do stuff for you, and when I say do stuff for you, I mean that they are required to dig your way down and excavate this shrine and turn it into its full potential. So essentially, there is a base building mechanic in the game. It's not super deep, but I quite enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun little touch. So on the map, you can see that I've got the currency cost, and we've got the number of devotees that you need to have found in order to get to these places. So almost from the start, well, you can get down here because you need 2 devotees, and 300 currency. And then you can get in here, which gives you a kind of crafting upgradey thing, because you only need 1 plus 1,000, but you need to find another one to get through to the other side, and you need to find more and more of these, and there are 9 total in game. You need 9 in order to get to the final vault, which is where you can upgrade your weapon attack power, essentially. But if you don't want to find all 9, you actually only need 6 to finish the game. It doesn't even cost you cash to get into this chamber here, which is where the final boss is. But you can work your way down to, and this is my first kind of recommendation really, if you're finding a way through the game, get your way down to the phased flesh room as early as you can. As soon as you've found 3, save up some currency, make your way down to there and get phased flesh, because there's a lot of places that you can get to with that otherwise might take you a little longer to work your way around to. So yeah, each of these is a breakable wall that you need a devotee to excavate. And I thought that was a nice touch. The devotees are not super difficult to find, apart from 1 or 2, again, in the gardens. But I thought they added a nice kind of general touch and feeling to the game in terms of, yeah, this is something that is a little bit unique. This is something that you don't see too often in Metroidvania games. So in terms of what are Voidwrougt's USPs? What are its unique selling points? What sets it apart from other Metroidvanias, and what is gonna make people want to play? Well, first of all, you've got the setting. The setting is Eldritch Horror. It's not super creepy, but there is some really gross stuff. All of the enemy designs are cool. All of the biomes really reflect the darkness and the fun. I like the art style so much in this game that I would actually really, really, really like to see the game like this. I would love... I don't even know whether it connects up properly, but like the guy did with the Hallow Nest project, where he mapped out the entire game of Hollow Knight, but with screenshots. I would really be interested in seeing what the game looks like, but I appreciate that that would be a long-term project, and a lot of the tools that I tend to use for this kind of stuff don't work with Voidwrought for whatever reason. Something about how the Cinemachine camera in Unity works just isn't playing nicely in this one. So this was all done by screenshots, and each screen is roughly about that big. So it took a while. I managed to remove the player from a lot of them, but that took a while. That took probably 30 minutes to put together, and it's the smallest area in the game. It's just that section. So I really would like to see it, but I don't have time to do it right now. It's something that I feel I might work on, just because of how cool I think the game looks. So the vibe and the art and the appearance of the game for me really works. The way the Metroidvania powers and the relics and souls tie into the vibe, the actual lore of the world is quite interesting as well. It's definitely got that kind of cosmic horror style vibe to it, though I do wish maybe it was a little deeper in places. But I've also criticised a lot of Metroidvanias for being too story heavy and leading you by the nose, whereas this very much does the opposite. So if you are after something that looks good and that is quite non-linear, Voidwrought might be for you. If you like the idea of the base building aspect, Voidwrought might also be for you. If you like a game that forces you essentially to play through a couple of times in order to see the different outcomes to things, Voidwrought also might be a game for you. There are probably 4 choices that you need to make in the game, and I've marked some of them on the map. These 2 are actually to do with the same thing. But yeah, you've got some choices to make. The other choices is on here. In fact, I need to add a red box to that. I'll do that just for consistency's sake. Some people might be frustrated with having to make choices, but generally speaking, the choices are only affecting achievements. They don't really lock you out of anything. You get the rewards regardless, except in one particular set of circumstances, which I've made sure I've actually marked on the map. If you do things in a slightly interesting or weird or potentially wrong, quote unquote, order, you could maybe accidentally lock yourself out of acquiring a couple of things. So, recommendation is, it's a spoiler, but if you are the kind of person that doesn't like being locked out of stuff, read through this section of the map. In fact, let's just show you. I'm not going to talk you through it, but I will show you this because I'm nice, frankly. You've been warned. You have been warned. Do this first, otherwise, if you choose a certain option, you can't get all the things. I think I've talked for long enough, frankly. I think when the fixes to secret finding and combat rebalancing and potentially New Game Plus get put in, I think I could very much see this being, for me, an S tier Metroidvania. As it is right now, it's kind of on the borderline between A and B tier, depending on how hard I think about trying to find all the secrets in the Lost Gardens. I was getting, as I said, a little bit frustrated with that. But overall, I think I enjoyed Voidwrought in its current state enough that it goes into the A tier. Just fix the difficulty scaling, get the secret finding stuff in, and I think you've got a very, very solid A tier. And I think maybe with future content or potentially the New Game Plus, that might just be enough, depending on how they do it, to get it into the S tier. It does a lot of things very, very right for me. And I haven't even spoken about the soundtrack. The soundtrack is potentially not what you might expect. I'm not going to put any music in because, you know, copyright issues. And I have enough issues as it is with copyright related stuff. But there's some good music in this game if you like a particular style of rock, metal, quite heavy stuff, as somewhat befits the somewhat heavy cosmic horror tone of the game. So there we go. Almost 30 minutes of me talking about, showing some footage of, and really kind of enjoying getting my unfiltered, unscripted thoughts down about Voidwrought. I really enjoyed mapping this. There's a lot on this map. It's a very... It's not that the world is like exceptionally large, but it's quite dense. There's a lot of things that I needed to make icons for, like grappling hooks, like charge blocks, like the souls, like the key items, special things that you can find. There's a lot on this map, and as I said, it took me a good chunk of time to do it. In fact, it's taken probably 25, 26 hours at this point to get the map to this stage. The game itself took me about 15, 16 hours to 100%, keeping in mind that there was no secret finder, and it took me a little while to find all of those. I think I actually finished my first non-100% run-through of the game in about 13 hours. Something like that. That's how long it took me to get to the ending. Or the first ending. But it took a bit more to get to the second one. I liked it. I think it was very, very good indeed. I'm going to put it in my A tier right now, with the potential for moving up into kind of Biome / Hollow Knight territory. In fact, I would argue that I like the art in this more than I like Hollow Knight's art. Blasphemy to some of you, I know. but this is my thing and it is only my opinion. An unscripted mini review kind of thought slash style thing on Voidwrought. If you want an actual review with editing and coherent thoughts, go and check out the Metroidvania Guru's review. I fully agree with the stuff that he has said in there. That's what he does. You know, he's the guy that you go to if you want really kind of comprehensive reviews. I'm just a bloke who's bad at games that is very, very hyper-focused on making maps. I'm going to go and take a rest now because I'm still really ill. Thanks for watching. Find this in the usual places. Demajen.co.uk will take you to all of the maps that I've produced. There's getting on for 100 of them. 100 games mapped. Now, coffee.com/Demajen will get you to my coffee.com shop where you can pick up a high-resolution copy of this map. I've tried to make sure that all of my recent maps are 16:9 so that you can stick them as your desktop wallpaper, because that's apparently a thing that people like doing. Don't know why, but people have asked for it. Multiple people, and that's not just me as a YouTuber saying, oh, people have said this. No, I'm not making things up. People have legitimately asked me for wallpaper, aspect ratioed versions of maps. So I'm just going to try and do that going forwards if I can. And I think it's super cool that people would want to have something that I've created as their desktop wallpaper, even if it's only so that they can have it on a second monitor while they're playing the game or something. I don't know why people do what they do. People are weird, and I love you all. Stay safe. Stay fabulous. Cheerio. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, why not click the like button and consider subscribing. Remember, you can ring the bell notification icon to get notified when new videos go live. And until next time, cheerio.